When Aaron Rodgers came to the New York Jets, he was seen as the guy that was going to turn this franchise around. His last year with the Packers, he was really solid, especially for his age. And the 2 years before that, he was the MVP of the league. So this was a guy who, despite his age, was still playing at a pretty high level and a quarterback. And the New York Jets have not had a competent quarterback for so many years now. Even recently, they've spent first-round draft picks on guys like Sam Darnold, who's just now breaking out from Minnesota, and Zach Wilson with the number 2 overall pick. This is a team that has not had much quarterback success whatsoever in recent years, and especially in the case of Zach Wilson, they really felt like that was the main thing that was holding them back. Because they liked what they had on the roster with guys like Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, some really good defense players as well. Sauce Gardner, of course. Garrett Wilson was a wide receiver who had produced with Zach Wilson as his QB. And even Zach, dealing with benchings as well. He played through a revolving door of quarterbacks throwing the ball. And Garrett Wilson still went out there and produced. And the Jets felt like they were really a quarterback away. So they go out and get Aaron Rodgers. And really the hope of this is because of his age. The hope in the idea of getting Aaron Rodgers was not just that he would be a really good quarterback for you for years, but that it could also create a culture shift in New York, because this is a franchise that has continually experienced losing seasons after losing seasons, incompetent front offices, and just not giving the fans much to root for, and not giving the team much to be optimistic about. So Aaron Rodgers, you expect him not just to produce like the quarterback that he is, like the uber talented, perhaps most talented quarterback in NFL history. You expect him to be a good quarterback now and to set the culture for the New York Jets for years to come, even after he's gone. So in his first year with the Jets, in his first game, just minutes into it, he goes down with an injury, and he is out for the year. And Zach Wilson comes in and plays technically the best quarterbacking of his career at 8 touchdowns to 7 picks, completing 60% of his passes. And when that's the best of your career, maybe there's some problems there. And yes, there is kind of the idea that Zach Wilson, he wasn't prepared in that role to go out there and start for this team. He thought he was going to sit and learn behind Aaron Rodgers. But we had seen in the years past that Zach Wilson had really struggled in the NFL as well. So the idea was that, this quarterback situation was what was holding this Jets team back. And they were just going to have to wait another year. And then, regardless of how they performed, it didn't matter. Ultimately, the end goal was getting Aaron Rodgers healthy. And this team was going to run it back next year. And they were going to be even better with a capable quarterback who was not too far removed from back-to-back MVP seasons. But Aaron Rodgers comes in this year, and his production is a little bit better than Zach Wilson, but the team is doing even worse than they did under Zach. And this is not something that is going to, credit to Zach Wilson, but there are many, many flaws with this Jets team, and Aaron Rodgers is not the solution. In fact, he is arguably part of the problem with this team. Because with Aaron Rodgers, the production in itself is fine enough. 20 touchdowns to 8 picks, almost 3,000 yards already at this point in the NFL season. But the biggest thing with Aaron Rodgers has been the culture shift, which was expected to be a major, major positive for him going to New York. But he has not helped that situation whatsoever. Obviously, there's a lack of team success that has come with the Jets this year. They've now been officially eliminated from playoff contention. But Rodgers, in his own right, can have a reputation for being a little bit of a diva at the quarterback position. And that is not what the Jets team needs. Aaron Rodgers, for better or for worse, he loves his guys to have around him, his yes men, really. Guys like Nathaniel Hackett, who, as we have seen, is not a competent NFL offensive coordinator. Devontae Adams, which is understandable. The Jets went out and got him, and that was ultimately to appease Rodgers, not necessarily for the talented player that Adams was. So really that move kind of displays the culture shift that is in New York right now. or that was in New York at least, and that was to please Aaron Rodgers first and foremost. And football operations come second. Because the Jets, for so many years now, their football operations haven't been very good in the first place. And now you get this all-time quarterback. And you want to do what you can to keep him happy. Because this is the best, most talented quarterbacks that the Jets have ever had. At the very minimum in recent memory. And so you want to please him. But now your focus shifts from what is best for winning games. And I would understand Devontae Adams, that move in itself in a vacuum. But other things like having Nathaniel Hackett as your OC, that's not a good move because from what we've seen with Nathaniel Hackett, he can really limit offenses. So that's not the most savvy move by the Jets. And so it becomes a situation of pleasing Aaron Rodgers. That is the culture of the Jets. It is Aaron Rodgers. And the team has failed around that. It would be one thing if they were playoff contenders, if they were a team that could really be seen as one with a Super Bowl window, but they're not. They have been eliminated from playoff contention. And they're doing all that they can to please Aaron Rodgers, and they're mortgaging their future for this. But they're not even experiencing success now. It's one thing to mortgage your future to win now, but you can't even do that. And now Aaron Rodgers is unhappy with this situation. And the Jets, they went out and fired their head coach because they weren't experiencing enough success. But what Robert Saleh did for that team at the bare minimum, despite maybe his offensive flaws as a head coach, he was a good defensive-minded coach. And ever since he's been gone, that defense has looked worse too. And that defense was the main redeeming factor for that Jets team. And now they don't have that, and the offense isn't clicking either. So there are no redeeming qualities for this Jets team. And they built everything around it to please this quarterback. Because they got too excited. They thought that they had some good pieces and that they were just a quarterback away. But the Jets, from what we've seen, are far, far more than quarterback away from winning. And so you add in Aaron Rodgers to that mix and the expectation that they were a quarterback away. So you do everything you can to help out Aaron Rodgers, and all of a sudden, he does become part of the issue in New York. Because you do everything to please him, when at this point in his career, he's not the guy that can elevate your team. And part of it isn't his fault that you ask him to elevate it, but he is asked to do so. And he just isn't capable of elevating this team anymore. So the Jets, they build everything around him. And now they're out from playoff contention. And that's not to say Aaron's a bad quarterback. Far from it. He's an all-timer and still putting up solid numbers. But in terms of what he's doing for his Jets team, he's really a negative for them. And now, whether you keep Rodgers or not, because there have been discussions about that, even if you don't keep him, this is a huge hit to your already negative culture. Because now you can see the real fundamental flaws of this team that are so much more than a quarterback. And then you did everything you could to bring in this quarterback and please him, make him happy. And you don't experience success with him either. And it really just becomes a situation of what can the Jets do? Because they've got solid skill position players on both the offensive and defensive end. They have a good quarterback who, as a veteran, at least has a very good knowledge for the game. One of the most talented quarterbacks ever. But it's still not enough. And it's just a matter of the culture of this organization and so many disappointments as they've had over the years. And they got overzealous. And they put all their eggs into one basket when that basket, as we're seeing this year, has become unstable. That basket might not be able to hold all those eggs anymore. And that basket is certainly not the solution for Easter, to wrap up that little metaphor there. So the Jets are going to be in a very interesting situation, in one that they never would have thought that they would find themselves in. In this case of Aaron Rodgers, because they thought he was their guy, and they planned around that. But they didn't have a plan B. And now the Aaron Rodgers tenure in New York has not experienced success either. And now you're in a situation where this quarterback might want out. And what comes after that? Because you're much more than a QB away. And this tenure has really only magnified the fundamental issues with the New York Jets organization and the many, many flaws that come with it. And so the Jets arguably look even worse than before, and they aren't winning now either. Through so many factors, some in A Rod's control, some not, the Aaron Rodgers tenure in New York has ultimately been a failure, and it does not set a positive precedent for the future of this Jets team. Not only have they failed to win now, but the change in culture has not been necessarily what this team wanted. And there's been scapegoats, there have been moves to appease Rodgers, but at the end of the day, none of it worked out. And it's a shame to see because it was a really exciting prospect of seeing Aaron Rodgers go to the Jets. He even, followed in the footsteps of Brett Favre, a great all-time Packers QB, going off to the Jets. And there were sky-high expectations, and perhaps some of it rightfully so, because this guy's an all-timer, he's so talented, and the Jets seemed like a promising roster, like a promising team. But Aaron Rodgers has not been the solution in New York, and has perhaps added on some more problems. No matter how you look at it, whether it's right now, whether it's the future, his tenure in New York has been a failure. Of course, as a result of the current team's success, but also the expectations that were placed on him and how it's been disappointing relative to that.